Hi everybody, my name is Mark Hayes and I hope you're having a great SQL Bits. Thank you so much for deciding to tune into my 20-minute session on how I migrated my favorite IaaS solution to PaaS. Let's get straight on to the presentation and the demo. So a little bit about me. I've been working with Microsoft technologies since 1999, SQL 7, OLAP 7, and then all the versions since then. Done a lot of data warehousing work, a lot of integration services, reporting services, analysis services, more recently Power BI, and more recently again Azure functionality. So let's get straight on to the next deck. So let's set the scene. It's circa 2012, 2013. Azure in context of running things was mostly running VMs inside an Azure. So SQL Server on-premise, very much king out there in terms of how to do any type of data solution. A company approached me with a need. They wanted to develop a system where your MAC address on your phone was captured and analyzed. When you go near a router, that router is aware of your phone. It registers with the phone that here's a MAC, here's a router, even if you don't connect onto the actual router. That information can be captured and that can be analyzed to tell you all sorts of interesting things about how often a person comes near that router. Or how often do people pass your shop versus visit your shop? How long do they stay in your shop? How frequently would they visit your shop? Basically, they wanted to develop a system that would measure footfall, loyalty, and dwell time of users based upon your MAC address passing near a router. So how would I have architected that solution back then? And the one caveat they kind of said at the time was they wanted a solution in the cloud. So cloud architecture 2012, I have an access point, which you can write some code on, and that access point has to send data to somewhere, which is a VM sitting in Azure. I now got to write a web service to receive the messages from that access point, which is something that's then going to be sitting inside an IaaS. That web service is going to be storing those messages on a file share. SQL Server Integration Service comes along, picks up those files, loads them into a SQL Server database, and then in front of that, I got SQL Server Reporting Services, managing this whole process via SQL Agent. A very kind of classical data warehouse solution to what was a data problem, how to handle lots of information coming into me continuously from access points. If I was to now look at that architecture, well, I still have my access point that I can put my code onto, but I can write my code to send straight to an Azure Event Hub. From the Event Hub, I can analyze that data using Azure Stream Analytics to put it into an Azure database, and then to allow analysis via Power BI. And that's it. A much cleaner serverless approach to this solution, not having to install services and servers, just using pure platform as a service. So let's have a demo of how this actually all looks and works. So for the access point, I've just written a C# application in here that will contact my event hub once a second and send on some message pretending that it's a MAC address. We'll see a little bit more of that running in a second. Inside Azure itself, I've got a SQL database, and I'm not going to show you anything more. It's an Azure SQL database. You can set up in different ways, scale it to whatever level you want. The one I have here running is quite a basic little database. I then have an event hub. So an event hub is a place that you can receive messages and events, and then it just stores them. And you can decide what you want to do with those messages and events from other areas of Azure. You can see in here that earlier today I was receiving lots of messages, and at the moment there's no messages being received by my event hub. Let's pop out of here and let's look at Stream Analytics. So Stream Analytics is a way of processing data coming from an event hub in a real ingestion approach. The messages are continuously coming, and Stream Analytics is continuously analyzing that data. So in a Stream Analytics job, there's at least 3 components, and there could be a 4th component. So if I have a look at my topology over here, input, functions, queries, and outputs. Let's have a look at inputs. So I've got one input in here at the moment, and you can see that's what is coming from the source type, what it is. I could add in another input in here, and you get a sense of where I can be taking my data from. I'm grabbing it from an event hub. It could also be an IoT hub, or it could be pulling it straight from blob storage. Have a look at the one that I have in here. That'll do a quick test to see, can I connect onto my event hub that actually exists. And you can see of the type source over here that it is of a source event hub. That's successfully made a connection test. Let's look at the output. So lots of different places that I could output data from in an Azure event, in a Stream Analytics job. I'm choosing to put it into a SQL database, but you can see other things in there, table storage, straight onto Service Bus, into Cosmos DB, pump it into Power BI, put it into Synapse, Data Lake, storage, etc., or into other event hubs in here. The one that I've got set up in here is something called Azure Stream Analytics Demo, and it's a type SQL database sync set up in there. The query. The query is the bit in the middle that connects the inputs to the outputs. So over here, you can see my two inputs, console source and my Azure Stream Analytics demo. Here, I've got my SQL statement. And straight away, you'll see these names existing in here. So you can see that I'm selecting stuff from console source. So selecting things from my input. I'm inserting it into Stream Analytics demo, which is my output. And the rest of it is some basic SQL. So I'm doing a group by in here on my access point. I'm doing a little bit of basic analysis to see whether this was a visitor or passerby. I'm doing that based upon how often have I seen that MAC. And then finally, I'm counting how often I've seen the MAC in there as well. So I'm counting it by something, by a time period, which is this tumbling window function that exists, which is a stream analytics job of basically classifying a continuous stream of data into chunks of time. So I've set this up at a very narrow interval at the moment of every 10 seconds, run this analysis. So every 10 seconds, run this analysis over there, pump the outputs into my stream analytics demo. Down here, you can actually see some sample data that has come in recently. That's my raw level data that I'm going to be getting, my access points, when did I see it, some processing time, etc. And I can go along and run a test query against that input preview. It will run that and it will produce this. And you can see down here, here's my 10 seconds, 10 seconds later at 20, 10 seconds later at 30 seconds past. So it's taking that window of 10 seconds and saying, well, within that period of time, this is what I saw. So having got this up and running, I'm going to choose to actually kick up and kick off my Stream Analytics job. And I'm going to start that from console inputs from now. So that's running now, kick off now. While that's kicking off, let's just talk about the fourth part of a stream analytics, which is a function. Now, I don't use functions in this demo, but functions are a way of taking data from an input and within that SQL statement, passing it into some other part of the Azure ecosystem. So if you had a cognitive services function available to you, you could take some text data, pass it into cognitive services to do some analysis on it, get the result from it, and then output that to your stream analytics output area. So that's still kicking off. Let's just pop over to here. I'm just going to do a quick truncate on my table. And we'll see at the moment my stream analytics table is empty. So this is my Azure database that I've got going on over here. And I'm looking at a particular table that I want to output, that I'm loading my data into. And it's all empty because I've just truncated it. Let's pop back and see is my analytics job up and running. Not there yet. Should be there very soon, so I can monitor it up in here. And then from a simulation of my access point, I've got a very basic little C# program in here. You can see as part of the C# program, I have got a connection endpoint that I defined. So that actually is my connection to my event hub. That is the name of my event hub. All I got going on here is a little bit of a random generator on a MAC address. And down here, I'm creating a JSON message, which basically is, here's my access, here's my MAC address, this is the date and time that I'm actually seeing it, and throwing it up, the details, writing that out. Let's see, is my analytics job running? So now I can see that my streaming job is now running successfully. I still won't have anything inside my database because I haven't sent any data to it yet. But now let's start sending data. So kicking off that job, and that's going to write a message. And you can see the message popping up here in my console. This is what it's sending in approximately once every second going on there. So access point 1, 2, 4, 3, 10, 17, etc. Now let's see if we've got any data. None in there yet. And there we go. So it's now hit the first 10-second window, taken what's arrived in that 10-second window and summarized up. So in total, we got 3, 4, 5, we got 7 events were received during that 10 seconds window, and that's how it was grouped it. If I was to run it again, I'm now into another period of time. So I've gone from the 0 to 10 seconds past to 20 seconds past. If I run it again, maybe I'm up to 30 seconds past now. Now I'm up to 30 seconds past. So my data that's coming in here is now being received by my event hub, being passed into my stream analytics job. It's doing the analysis on it, writing it out onto another Azure table for myself to do analysis on. So while that's running away, we can now go, well, I've got my data inside in the database table now. Well, the rest of this is pretty easy. It's just a report now, right? So let's pop over and go to Power BI. And this actually is a kind of sample report that I did for a client on using this MAC address information. And you can see how this can be utilized in here. So on the bottom, it's capturing the number of clients per hour, comparing it to a benchmark number that they would get for that same shop over time. So at this is probably a weekend that they ran this. It was significantly lower than their normal benchmark in here. I can flip over onto different Macs. And in here, I can see that on this particular day, they were much closer to their normal benchmark. And there's your kind of 6, 7, 8 o'clock rush hour in the mornings, people going into work, a little bit of a lull, it goes up a little bit at lunchtime and out again. And then this is just looking this over all time, on what particular days did they get the most jobs. And again, in this case, pretty consistent to their benchmark the whole time. So that's just giving you a little bit of flavor of how you can have Power BI just connecting to obviously to an Azure SQL database to pull back that data and do all sorts of analysis on MAC address capturing. I can see that my job is still running away in there. And even down here from a point of view of resource utilization, when I'm in my stream analytics job, now I can see I had a cluster of messages earlier today, and here's my cluster of messages coming in now. And here's my current stream analytics running away, and it's giving me 18% is the current processing power that it's using on my stream analytics job to handle that data. So I can see in here that I've got a little bit of capacity and I could handle a bit more in here before I'd have to get into any questions of how I would start scaling this out, which if I was to look at the scale outside, I'm running on a 1 DTU, sorry, not a DTU, I'm running on 1 streaming unit at the moment. That could be scaled up to 192 if I needed to go that way. So substantial amount of scale is available. So let's pop back to my present. I'm just going to kill my console. No, and it's done. So we close that off. So now I should have my final set of results in here. And there's all my data from that console app. So we got 58 rows logged from about 120 messages sent in there. So that's my demo. So summaries and conclusions out of this. If I was to compare the IaaS to the PaaS side of building this, to begin with, the PaaS was substantially quicker to build. My original IaaS work took, I think, around 5 days between installing, you're getting your VM up and running, installing your software, building the code, particularly in the integration services world, to doing the reports, databases, the SQL agent, managing all of that process. There's a lot of managing stuff and admin things to do in there. Whereas inside the platform as a service, you're just spinning up services. And the only real code it had to write was that SQL statement to take it from the input and put it into the output. Much easier to scale. I used to live in a little bit of fear of my client that if they were to turn around and say, Mark, we've got a major deal with a major retailer, we're going to have 1,000 access points coming online in the next month. I straight away will be having questions about, okay, how can I scale that effectively in my VM environment? Sure, I can put it onto a bigger VM, faster disk, etc. But at a certain point in time, that maybe is no longer an option. And then you're having conversations about, well, do I need multiple VMs to send in messages to different VMs? And then how do I consolidate them together? And it becomes a kind of a complex question to scale. Versus in the platform as a service approach, I can scale my event hub independently. I can scale my stream analytics independently. And if I need it on the database, I've got options around scaling on the database side independently as well. So I can get quite granular about where I put the scale in and how to go about doing it. This makes it significantly easier to cost per unit. Um, they can tell from looking at, well, how many resources are being consumed at the moment. I can turn around and kind of go, well, I'm going to need X amount of units to handle that extra capacity you're going to send into me. Substantially less code written, it basically was that block of code. And if I was to look at this now and kind of consider, are there other ways you could do it? I guess this is the whole wonder, the joy of Azure. There are so many different ways we could approach this problem now. I showed you device to hub to stream database in Power BI, but maybe we could go device to lake and put that into a database and into Power BI. Or maybe we could go device into a hub and then drop that down onto Blob and then maybe have synapse on top of it and putting that into Power BI. Or maybe just go device straight to Blob and synapse. Lots of different ways that we can actually start building up these types of solutions now in Azure, which compared to where we were in 2012 is a huge progress forward. Um, so that's it. I mean, I hope you found this of use. I certainly enjoyed building it together, and I guess it just kind of shows the benefit of continuously learning and seeing the new ways of doing things in Azure to give new ways of solving those data problems. Thanks very much. I'm going to be online, so if you have any questions, please send them on to me. Thanks very much. Take care, guys. Bye bye.